You are listening to the Book Perspective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So, with that, let's get into the episode. Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Book Perspective. And this week we are doing A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett Sinclair. Mm-hmm. Is that her name?
Yep.
Like the full name? It's Sinclair. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else?
Nope.
Okay. Every time I'm going to look it up. I'm going to be prepared, and I'm never prepared. So be prepared for side conversation because I am excited for this book for all the not book related reasons. Bless you. See, I gave you the sneezes. But anywho, Keely, how was your week?
My week was really
when
good.
Did I see you last? I just saw you.
Yeah, I don't
know. I don't know what time it is.
It feels like it's been like yesterday, but also like forever.
Yeah.
But good.
It's St. Clair, not Sinclair.
Oh yeah, I thought you said Saint. But...
Oh, okay. Okay. Scarlett St. Clair. I knew it was Saint, and I was like, something's not right. Aha. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but it's been good. Saturday.
Oh yeah.
I went to the Scarlett book fair in wherever it was. McCordsville, I believe.
Oh.
It was so nice.
It looked cool. It looked like medieval in there.
It was, so apparently it was like the filming location for Sammy Terry. Yeah. So it was very like horror themed.
Cool.
So cool. And I bought a tote bag and 6 books. Got a couple authors that are interested in coming and doing like signings here, which is cool. But yeah, no, I had a great time.
I'm jealous. I wanted to go, but I had to work. Boo. Boo, real jobs. Keely has a fun real job, so she gets to go do fun stuff. What have I done this actual week? I'm on spring break from my regular job, so I'm kind of off. But I told Keely I thought I died today. I do Botox at my clinic, so I decided to do it to myself, and I did 1 injection, and I had a panic attack. So I didn't do any more, and all day I've been spiraling down a deep, dark hole. I'm fine. I truly am. But I'm just paranoid for no reason. Obviously, I'm perfectly fine. I won't be doing that again. So there's that. I don't really have anything. I do leave this weekend because I'm going on my bachelorette trip. Woo! I'm going to Houston. I'm annoyed because the last 2 trips I'm going south, and it's cold. It's like 68.
Ew.
I'm like, why can't I just get like it's 85 like yesterday, I think, and like how it's warmer right now and then it's going to be cold the rest of the week here. It's like that down there. I'm like, why can't I get the warm weather? Sucks. So that's mine. Deal. I've been doing wedding stuff. Blah. That's it. So, okay. Well, we'll go ahead and do the blurb, and then I just want to talk about. I'm excited to talk about this book for not book related. I mean, I like this book, but I actually just like the stuff in this book more, so I want to talk about it. But go ahead with the blurb.
All right. Persephone is the goddess of spring by title only. The truth is, since she was a little girl, flowers have shriveled at her touch. After moving to New Athens, she hopes to lead an unassuming life disguised as a mortal journalist. Hades, god of the dead, has built a gambling empire in the mortal world, and his favorite bets are rumored to be impossible. After a chance encounter with Hades, Persephone finds herself in a contract with the god of the dead, and the terms are impossible. Persephone must create life in the underworld or lose her freedom forever. The bet does more than expose Persephone's failure as a goddess. However, as she struggles to sow the seeds of her freedom, love for the god of the dead grows, and it's forbidden.
So, if you could describe this book in one word, what would you say?
Oh, I would say Not one word, but
That's
I
fine.
would say oddly sweet.
Oh, okay. I would say challenge.
That's a good one.
Okay. So before I even do like a general summary, I have questions that Keely's not prepared for. So first question is, this is a Hades and Persephone like retelling. So what did you know about Hades and Persephone prior to this book?
Honestly, not much.
Nothing?
At
Okay.
all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. What do you know Greek-wise prior to this book?
I have little to no knowledge. Literally, the only stuff I know comes from watching Hercules.
I love it. I love it. I am such a simp for like Greek stuff because I'm very basic. I love all the basic things. So of course I love like Greek gods and goddesses because I'm basic, whatever. So all of the side conversations today will be about these things. When I go on a tangent, it'll be I have like things prepared. I am prepared for not what I'm supposed to be prepared about. Did I have any other questions? Oh, okay. So, this is kind of two questions. One, if you could be a Greek god, if you could think of any that you know of, who would you be?
Oh, God.
You might not know of any, so you might not have an answer for that. Which means you might not have an answer to the second question either.
Ooh, honestly, I don't know.
Okay. So you probably wouldn't have an answer to the second one, which was who you think you're the most like. I was going to say, if I could be like any of them, that's kind of hard, but I would probably say like Hestia because she makes bread and I'm fat. I love bread. Who am I the most like would probably be like, that's hard because I have so many qualities of like all of them, like hot-headedness. Like I definitely like I would like to say that I'd be like Athena, but I'm not level-headed. I'd be more like Aries leaning, but like I want to be Artemis-y, but again, like I feel like all the goddesses, like they paint them to be, and this they kind of touch on this in this book, like they paint them to be so like level-headed and like docile, but they're wrathful as well. So I don't know who I would be the most like. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I want to be Hestia. I want to make bread. I want to make some bread. Okay. So, A Touch of Darkness is, again, it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. It is in the point of view of Persephone, except for the very end of this book goes into a little bit. So this is are there 3 books? She is just getting ready to release either book 3 or book 4 of this series. And there's also so there's the Touch of Darkness is Persephone's point of view, and then there's a Game of Fate, and that's Hades' point of view. But it's the same book story of each book is the same story, it's just their point of views. So technically there's only like 3 stories, but there's 6 books altogether if you're tracking me. So I want to say she's either getting ready to release book 3 or book 4. I've read all of them. And so A Touch of Darkness is the very first book of all of them, and it is in Persephone's point of view, except for the very end we get like a taste of a Game of Fate, which goes into Hades' point of view, which is nice. It does repeat some of this book, but it pretty much gives you like different stuff. Like it's not just the exact same story all over again. If you don't know anything about Hades and Persephone, if you don't know who Hades is, I don't know what to do. But Hades is one of like the big 3. Obviously, I have to just go into the spiel. So Zeus is like the god of the gods. Hades is his brother, and he is the god of the underworld. Zeus is the god of Olympia, like the heavens. Poseidon is their other brother. He's the god of the sea. The 3 of them also share rule over earth. Persephone is the daughter of Demeter. In different versions of like the tales, Demeter is the sister of Hades and Zeus and Poseidon and all of them. In other versions, she's not, but whatever. Demeter basically, in like traditional tellings, kind of hides Persephone. But in different tellings, or in the most traditional telling, Hades steals Persephone away from Demeter. But in this telling, there is a love story. So in just a general summary, Hades is still the god of the underworld in A Touch of Darkness, and A Touch of Darkness is very modern. So like all the gods like are on Earth, but they have like clubs and restaurants, and like they mention Olympus, and it is like the heavens, but like it's really weird. And Persephone is actually on Earth, like pretending to be a human. Her mom is like allowing her to do that and like using what they call glamour to hide her goddess form. And no one knows that she even is a goddess. Like the gods don't even know that she exists. And she has a roommate that's a human who doesn't even know she's a goddess. And so she is getting ready to graduate from college, and she wants to be like a news reporter, and her mom has always hated Hades, and in like traditional history, Demeter hates Hades too. And so she like just is really curious because in this telling, Hades makes deals and bargains with humans and they seem really cruel. So she wants to know why, but obviously Hades is like dark, mysterious, and it's sexy. So like there is some passion brewing, and she's not supposed to, like, he's terrible and her mom hates him, and that's attractive. So basically like she is like, oh my God, I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing this. He's terrible. And she finds herself in a contract, which is the reason that she doesn't like Hades in the first place. And so this book is basically, her whole story is like trying to finish college, not getting the wrath of her mother, and trying to get out of this contract with Hades, so that basically she doesn't end up being his possession at the end of this book. So that is my general summary of A Touch of Darkness. If you have not read this book and you do not want to be spoiled, this is your warning to pause here and exit. If you don't care or you've already read it, then let's go ahead and get started. So chapter 1 is called The Narcissist. And so we open up with Persephone. She is at a coffee shop studying. She is just thinking about Hades' club. She's very curious because people go to see Hades at this club to bargain with him, and she thinks how horrible it is that he takes advantage of them. So basically, typically people go because obviously he's the god of the underworld. So typically someone has died and they want that person back. And they're trying to bargain with him, like maybe it's a child, a loved one, like a spouse or something, and they want them back. She's getting ready to start an internship tomorrow at New Athens News in hopes that when she graduates in 6 months that she'll be offered a job there. She lives in what they call Acropolis, which is what they call the city in Greece now. And she basically moved here for college 4 years ago. She lives with her best friend, Alexa, who we just refer to as Lexa. And they met in class. Lexa's like really cool. She has tattoos, short hair, and she loves Hecate. Hecate is a goddess basically, but she like only is in the underworld. She is like, she's really not even a goddess. She's like a being of the underworld. She's super powerful. She is like over witchcraft and like all like dark spooky things, and we love Hecate. Alexa is trying to get her to go out tonight to celebrate the fact that she got the internship, and Persephone asks her waitress if she thinks that Hades has a sense of humor for picking the Narcissus as the symbol for like his realm and business and everything, because the Narcissus flower is basically a symbol of rebirth, and obviously he's the god of the dead, so why would he pick that flower? She thinks how it really should be her symbol because Persephone is the goddess of spring, so spring is a signal for rebirth, so why wouldn't that be her signal or symbol? And Alexa basically surprises her and tells her that they got into the club Nevernight, which has a 3-month waiting list and is owned by Hades. So Persephone tells us that the humans love the gods' businesses. So Hades has a club, Dionysus, which if you know Dionysus is the goddess of like partying and wine. He's pretty lit. Aphrodite obviously is like love. She has like, in this world, she has like couture and perfume and anything you could pink stuff. And Persephone basically thinks about her promise to her mother, who again is Demeter. And basically she promised to her mom that she would stay away from all of the gods when she came to the Acropolis, because none of the gods know that Persephone exists. Somehow, some way, Demeter had Persephone and kept her a secret from all of the gods. No one knows that she's a goddess because she is pretending to be mortal. So basically her mom gave her some of her power, and they call it a glamour, and it's able to mask her goddess features, which we'll learn is like the gods have like really bright eyes, and they also have horns. They take different shapes, but like goat horns is kind of like what they're like most commonly look like. Her mom is also pretty mad because she switched her major from botany, which would make sense because she's the goddess of spring, to news media. And we learn that Persephone has never even kissed a boy, and she fears her mother smiting anyone that she would even think about dating. So she's like very protected, sheltered, crazy overprotective mom. Demeter told her that the gods don't respect love, and as an adult, she has basically learned that to be true because all of the gods cheat, and all the mortals, like, they just age and die. So, like, there's no point of dating them, and all the gods just cheat on each other. So, like, really, there is no point of being in a relationship because there's no good outcome. She's thinking that if she goes tonight, she's going to have to sneak away because her mom basically have a bunch of nymphs that are watching her. And so nymphs are like, I was going to say lesser fairies. I'm not in Akatar. They're not gods, but they're like fantasy thing. I don't know. They can be like tree nymphs or river nymphs. They just, I don't know. They're beings that aren't, they're magical beings. I don't know how to describe what a nymph is if you don't know.
Google it.
Yeah, I have no idea how to describe that. But her mom basically uses them to watch after Persephone. And Persephone wants to meet Hades. He's mysterious and interesting, and that's attractive. She's like, I'm curious. Me too, Persephone. So Alexa asks if she doesn't want to go tonight because of her mom, and she tells Persephone, oh, by the way, your mom showed up at our apartment a few weeks ago. And Persephone is like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, I'm sorry, I forgot. But then she was like, also, your mom told me not to tell you. And she said, your mom's really scary. Persephone knows her mom was in there snooping because I guess Demeter was like, can I see her room? And I would have been like, I'm sorry, no. Like, right. No. Like, that's weird. And you don't think that's weird? And Persephone basically knows that her mom probably enchanted her mirror to spy on her. Creep. Like, you don't have anything better to do? Persephone agrees to go to Nevernight because now she's feeling rebellious and because Demeter's least favorite god is Hades. So Lexa leaves for Persephone to get ready and Lexa leaves to go get ready and Persephone grabs the waitress' wrist and she tells her, if you report anything back to my mom, I'll kill you. So she basically figured out that the waitress was a nymph in disguise. And she tells us that unlike Demeter, because Demeter is the goddess of like the harvest, and so she basically rules over Earth, even though Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus like really rule over Earth. But unlike Demeter, Persephone currently doesn't have any powers. Even though she's the goddess of spring and should be able to grow stuff, she has no powers. Chapter 2 is Nevernight, so they're actually going into the club, and Persephone knows if her mother saw her there, she would send her back to her great house prison. So we learned that basically the reason that no one also knows Persephone exists is because her mom basically kept her in this greenhouse her entire life, and it was basically like a prison. Her mom is very vengeful, and she has other people in prison there as well. So Lexa tells Persephone that Hades is here tonight, and now she's really worried because obviously he's a super powerful god, and he'll be able to see through her glamour. They see a man get kicked out of line, and the guy's just like, wait, I just need to get her back. And they basically know that someone that he cares about has died, and he was trying to get in there to bargain with Hades. And Hades is very clear on the rules about souls. Like, he does not bargain to bring souls back. They're also not allowed to bring phones and cameras into Nevernight. And basically any place that Hades goes to is not allowed to have photos. Hades is the only god that has like no documented photos of him. Like later in the book, like she looks up stuff about Hades and it's like the painted like pictures of him. Like there's nothing, no photographs. So they get in and they go to the bar and a man comes up to them and is like, hey, drinks on me. And this is Adonis. They say he's like super handsome and he tells them he's a regular there. And he takes them over to his friends. There's like a set of twins and a girl named Sybil. So Sybil asks where everyone from, and Persephone tells her like, oh, I'm from Olympus, even though like she was in the greenhouse the whole time, but technically she is from Olympus. And Sybil tells them that she is an oracle, and oracles, like in the olden days, they were kind of like, not fortune tellers, but they could like, you know, predict things or whatever. But in current times, they basically serve a specific god and they are born with these gifts. And now they act like as press managers for the god. And Apollo is the god that has his eyes on Sybil, but her family's actually not happy about it. So we learn that there are certain people in this world who are called the impious. And that means that they have rejected the gods because everyone's not happy with how the gods just kind of come down, take over, and don't do for the humans. Persephone looks up onto the balcony and she sees like the most handsome man she's ever seen, and she starts to feel like a burning fire. And I was like, oh, this is Hades. And she sees a woman come up behind him, wrap her arms around him, and so she's like, oh, okay, of course he's got a woman. So Adonis asks if she's looking for Hades and tells her that he's usually upstairs, and that's where he does his deals. And basically, if the human loses, then Hades gets to pick like some impossible stake, like asking an alcoholic to stay sober, because he basically can see a person's vices. And if they fail to like meet the terms, he'll get their soul, which I mean, he'll get their soul either way. Like, it doesn't really
Right.
matter. So Lexa tells Persephone, like, she wants to go to the bathroom. And they go in the bathroom, and she's like, I'm in love with Adonis. Of course she is. So they come out of the bathroom, or Lexa comes out of the bathroom first, and then Persephone comes out after her, and Alexa's gone. So she sees a woman at the stairs, and she's like, oh, your friend went upstairs. And she's like, do you want the password? And the like lady lets her go upstairs, and she runs into a Gorgon, which Gorgons are like Medusa. So everyone knows Medusa had the snakes. This Gorgon does not have the snakes anymore, but she doesn't have eyes either, which is good because they turn you to stone. So, but the Gorgon can smell her, and she goes, oh, you're a goddess. And she's like, oh, no, like, you're wrong. And she's like, no, like, you're a goddess. Like, I can smell you. So she goes upstairs, and a man comes up, like, she sits down at a table, and the man comes up to her and says, like, do you want to play cards? And she asks him, like, will you teach me? And he tells her he's never seen her before. And she says that he must come here often. And he says, I come here because it's fun, and asks, like, why are you here tonight? And she says, well, I was feeling, rebellious. So she asks, it's the man that she saw on the balcony. So she asks about the woman, and he says, oh, that was Minty. Minty is she a river nymph? No, she's not a river nymph. What kind of nymph is she? She is a nymph, but I can't remember what kind she is. We'll get back to Minty. So the man tells her that Minty's basically always putting her hands where they don't belong. And Persephone tries to leave, but he says, no, like, stay, let me teach you how to play. He wants to teach her how to play poker. And basically, he wants to wager, like, question for question, like, for each game. So she still doesn't know who this man is. And basically, like, they take turns playing, and he wins the first round, and he asks her, like, who is she feeling rebellious against? And she says her mom. He wins again, and he wants to know why. And she says, like, she starts talking about Hades, and she goes, I don't understand why people want to sell their soul to Hades. And the man says that's not why they do it. They do it because they think they can win. So Persephone says, I wonder if that upsets Hades that, like, the humans think they can win. And he goes, darling, I win either way. So she gets pissed because she's like, oh my God, Hades, and tries to rush and leave. And she texts Lexa saying, like, I'm leaving, and she's upset. And she wants to, and all she can think about is, like, how attracted she was to Hades and how she wants to sleep with him now. But she is also disgusted by the fact that that was Hades, and that she also lost cards to him. So keep that in mind. We go to chapter 3. This is New Athens news. And she noticed that after she left that night that she has small black dots on her wrist where Hades had touched her. So she grabs a bracelet to cover it up, and her mom just, like, materializes in her apartment, which would piss me off so bad. Like, I am a grown adult. Knock at the very least, and stop coming over. Also. So her mother asks, like, about her internship, and she says, like, you don't have to work here, Kore. So Persephone in the ancient myth has two names. Kore was her original name, which means bringer of death. And then she was renamed as Persephone. So just remember that. So Persephone kind of snaps at her mom and tells her, like, don't call me that, because she does not like to be called Kore. And her mother tells her that, this world is, like, putting distance between me and you. And Persephone tells her, like, Mom, you're all I have. And her mother says, yeah, don't forget that. So Persephone's like, okay, I gotta go to work. So she goes to work, and all she can think about is Hades. And her mother hates Hades, and she needs her mom's magic to keep up her glamour. So she knows, like, I cannot be thinking about Hades. I can't be talking to Hades. Like, I gotta stay away from Hades. So she goes to work, and she meets with her boss, and his name is Demeter. And he tells her about the Triad. So the Triad is a group of those impious mortals. Again, those are the people who, like, don't like the gods. And basically, like, they're kind of like a rogue group who are, like, out to get the gods. And also when she gets to her office, she sees Adonis. So Adonis works with her. Yay. We go to chapter 4, and it's called The Contract. So she, after work, goes to Nevernight, and she is, like, beating on the door, and an ogre comes out because Hades uses ogres as his bodyguards. So the ogre answers the door, and they, like, start arguing because he's like, we're closed. And she's like, she calls him ugly, and he grabs her by the throat. And so she drops her glamour, and he, like, is shocked because, oh, like, this is not a human. And he drops her, and then Hades comes out. And she said it looks like he was, like, undressing from last night because he's still in his suit. And the ogre says, like, I didn't know she was a goddess. I will accept my punishment. And Hades says, like, and she's a woman. Like, it's not just the fact that she's a goddess. She's a woman. And Hades tells her to come in, and he like whispers in her ear saying like, you're full of surprises. And he tells her like, I was just about to go to bed. So she asks him like, how did he know? And he says like he recognized that her magic was Demeter's and asks, why are you not using your own magic? Persephone says, why did you do this? Asking about like the mark on her arm. And he says like, you lost, basically. And he tells her like the rules are never night are clear. And she says, no, they aren't, asshole. And he tells her, don't call me names. You invited me to your table and you started the contract and I get to choose the terms. And she says like, I'm a goddess. And he's like, that doesn't change that. Like, this is the law of the club. And basically he tells her like, so the terms of their contract is that he wants her to create life in the underworld. And she has 6 months to do it. And if she doesn't, she will become a permanent underworld resident. So Persephone says, you're going to face the wrath of my mother if you make me live there. And he says, oh, I know. And he says, so will you if she finds out about your little bargain with me. So he tells her to come by tomorrow and he'll show her the way to the underworld. She doesn't want the bouncer to remember her goddess form, and he tells her that he'll erase his memory after the punishment for treating any kind of woman that way. And she asks, like, what will that cost her? And he says, a favor, whatever he wants at a future time. He grabs her shoulders and kisses her forehead, and he tells her that the kiss basically is how he gives her his favor, which allows her to have access to Nevernight at any time. And then a woman comes in. Of course, it's Menthe. And she like tries to touch him, but he pulls away. And Persephone touches the flowers on Hades' desk and they die. Chapter 5. I did not get the title of this one. Don't know why. So Hades has his driver drive her home, and his driver is a Cyclops. And his name is Antony. And he is like basically telling her that he thinks that Hades needs a wife. So she asks him how long he has worked for Hades, and how long he has served Hades. And he's like, I don't serve Hades, I choose to work for him. And he's like, of all the gods, Hades is the most divine. So when she gets home, Lexa's waiting for her, and she like basically admits to Lexa that she met Hades, and she's like, tell me all about him. And she's like, he's handsome and he's just like power, basically. And Lexa's like, you have a crush on him. And she's like, yeah, whatever, but I can't condone the fact that he does the bargains. And Lexa's like, you should write about him for the paper. And I'm like, girl, you want to get her killed?
Right.
So Persephone wants to write about him, but she knows that if anything happens to her that, she knows that if anything happens to her that he'll feel her mother's wrath. So it's the next day, and she's going to go to the underworld with Hades, and she's trying to figure out how to make life in the underworld because, one, again, she doesn't have any powers, and two, it's the underworld. And she's like, does he want me to make a garden? Like, what else does that mean? And so she's thinking, like, maybe she can make him mad enough to free her from the contract by writing the article on him. So she wonders why she doesn't have powers like why the other gods, because she's basically the only god that doesn't have powers. And she's at the office before she heads to Nevernight, and her mother shows up asking, like, why were you at Nevernight? Girl, like, Demeter, go find you something to do. You are hundreds of thousands of years old. And then Persephone's like, how do you know where I was? And Demeter's like, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It absolutely. And she's like, I was there for work, and and I'm going back today. And Demeter's like, absolutely not. And she's like, let me remind you that a condition of you being allowed to be here is staying away from the gods, especially Hades. And Persephone tells her, like, well, it's my job. And Demeter's like, well, then you're going to quit. Persephone says no. And she asks Demeter, like, what are you afraid of? Him seducing me? And she knows, like, her mother will punish her for standing up to her. And that her mom can take her back to the greenhouse. But Demeter just leaves because she's pissed off. So Persephone starts considering, like, how she can interview Hades. And she, she wasn't at work. She was in class. And so Lexa asks after class, like, what's wrong? And she tells her, like, my mom's been tracking me. And Lexa's like, doesn't your mom know that you're an adult? Like, if you're getting ready to graduate college, then technically she would be like 22, 21. Like, obviously they're 21-ish if this is like normal world or whatever. Like, paying bills, got an apartment, leave me alone. So Lexa tells her, don't keep letting her like keep you from having fun or doing what you want. But Lexa also doesn't know that Persephone's immortal, Demeter's a goddess, like all the terms. So Lexa comes to work with her after class because she wants to see Adonis because she's infatuated. And Lexa asks if Adonis is as handsome as Hades, and Persephone's like, no. Like, girl, no. Boo. Tomato, tomato. Persephone asks Adonis if anyone's ever written about Hades in his bargains, and Adonis says no because the people entered willingly into the bargains with Hades, and also no one wants to end up in Tartarus. So Tartarus is like the pit of hell, if you know aren't aware. So we'll learn a little bit about Hades, the underworld, so in like normal terms. So if we had like hell, and then we had like purgatory, and then like the 7 circles of hell, like the bottom pit is like Tartarus, and that's where the worst people go, like the burning fire and brimstone, that's Tartarus. Adonis tells Persephone that if she's serious about writing about Hades, he'll send her like what he has on Hades already if she lets him read her article before she like publishes it. So he sends her like a bunch of notes and voice recordings that he has, and she says that she wants to go interview Hades today to give Hades a chance to give his perspective. And Adonis is like, okay. And so she takes Adonis with her to go to Nevernight, and he does not want to be here. Like, Adonis goes over and knocks on the door and was like, oh, no one's home. And she's like, you barely even knocked. But she knows that she has favor, so she goes over and opens the door, and he's like, I know that door was locked. Like, I know it was locked. So they go inside, and Adonis is like, hello, like a freaking loser. Because Persephone wanted to, like, sneak up on Hades, and, like, why would you go in there and be like, hello? Like, right. if you're that afraid of Hades, like, I wouldn't be in there, like, come out and find me. Like, you freaking loser. But Minty comes out, and Adonis asks, like, oh, do you work here? Are you the owner of this house? And she says, like, I'm his assistant. And he's like, you're so beautiful. Adonis is immortal, by the way. I don't know if I said that. He's just regular human. So Adonis tells Minty that they're there from New Athens News, and Persephone asks for Hades, and Minty says, do you have an appointment? And Persephone says no. And she says, well, then you can't speak to him. And Adonis is like, whoop, time to go. So Persephone says, inform him that Persephone is here. And because Minty's like, get out. So Minty does go back there, and she's pissed because she comes back, and of course Hades was like, bring her back. So Adonis like grabs Persephone's wrist, like trying to be like, okay, like we gotta go. And she like stares at him and kind of like lifts her glamour so her eyes start burning, and is like, let me go. Don't you ever put your little grubby hands on me again. So Adonis asks, why would Hades even know your name? And she tells him, I met him the other night, the night that I met you. So when Minty comes back, she takes them back to meet Hades, and Hades is pissed. And he asks her, why are you intruding? And so Persephone says, like, we want to comment on the complaints made about you. And he tells her he doesn't deceive the terms of his agreements with the people he enters bargains with. He says the terms are clear, and he doesn't challenge their vices. He challenges what's controlling their life, and it's their choice to overcome it. So Persephone says, how do you know their vice? And he says, I can see the soul. Ooh. Persephone thinks, like, what I wonder what he thinks about, or what he sees when he looks at me. And she looks at Hades, and then he like, and she kind of like snaps and tells him, like, you're the worst kind of god. And Hades says, I'm helping mortals, and I've had success. So he walks up to her, and Adonis like steps between them because he's like, okay, like tension, but that pisses Hades off. So he snaps his fingers, and Adonis just like drops cold to the floor. And Hades says, I'm assuming you don't want him to hear this next part. And he says he'll erase Adonis's memory. So Hades tells her that she's taking liberties with his favor, and says that she should know better than to bring Adonis to his club. Hades asks, will she include her experiences with him in her article about how he makes her blush and her blood boil, and like how she loses her breath when she's near him. And he's like, but are you too ashamed? I love Hades. Hades says, you are mine for 6 months, and if you write about me, I will ensure that there are consequences. And he tells her he's adding her to the club list tonight, so he wants her to come back. He wakes up Adonis and says that Minty will see them out. And Adonis asks on the way out, have you only met Hades once? And she's like, why? And he says that, you know, there's just a lot of tension between you guys for you only to have met like one time. Chapter 6 is the stakes. So she goes back to Nevernight that night, and she tells, like, she like runs into a bunch of different staff, and they're all like, my lady, and she cannot stand it. She's like, call me Persephone. And they're like, but Lord Hades says, like, call you my lady. And she's like, please do not call me my lady. Like, please call me Persephone. And she meets like a centaur named Ilias, and he takes her to Hades' office because Hades is busy. And she asks him, like, why do you serve Hades? And he says, I don't. I work for him, and Hades is very generous. He tells her Hades protects his people, and he would tear the world apart for them. And she can, like, look down from Hades' office, like, to see the club, and she figures, like, that's how he probably, like, looks down at people to figure out, like, who he wants to do his deals with. And she starts inspecting Hades' office, and she, like, is looking for the door because Minty came through a door in his office, like, just out of nowhere. And she, like, it's basically a magical door. She, like, can basically put her hand through it, and she steps through to this hallway, but then she, like, falls down these stairs and kind of, like, smacks, like, her ribs or whatever, and she takes off her heels and just, the girl just starts walking down this mysterious magical hallway. So she walks out basically like a cave, and it's like field of grass and flowers. And she can see in the distance there's like an obsidian palace. The air here is neither warm or cold. The sky was bright, but there's no sun. And she can smell like floral, spice, ash. And she said it's exactly what Hades smells like. And she's angry because she's like, there is life everywhere. Like, what does he want me to grow? Because there's literally grass. Like, she thought it would be like, you know, like burning wasteland. There's literally like lush life everywhere. And she's like, where is like the three-headed dog? Because Cerberus is supposed to be the guard dog of the Underworld, and he's notoriously like a giant three-headed dog. So she comes to this dark, wide river, which we know is the River of Styx. And she says the water looks like oil, and she wonders like, how am I supposed to get across? So the girl gets in it. Why would you get into a river that looks like oil? Like, outside of the fact that you are a goddess, and maybe you should have like a couple of brain cells, I'm not getting in there. I'm just going to keep walking. So she gets in, and of course, something grabs her ankle and starts to pull her under. It's a freaking corpse. And she gets up to the surface, but then like other ones start pulling her down, and something like grabs her from the bank, pulls her out, and like she can barely like breathe. And what we learn is that it is Hermes. He is notoriously like the god of trickery and thieves. And that's what she says. And he goes, you also forgot merchants, roads, and heraldry. And she said, oh, how could I forget the heraldry? Also, I have no idea what heraldry means. I love Hermes. Like, his depiction all the time is just like goofy, like funny. He is like a girl's bro. Like, he is funny. So she's like laid out in this grass, like out of breath, almost drowned by skeletons because she's an idiot. And he says, should I guess who you are? And he says, you're the goddess of sexual frustration. And she says, that's Aphrodite. And he says, I mean, Hades' sexual frustration. And then he gets blasted across this field by Hades. And Hades says, you try my patience and my favor. And Hermes says, you are a goddess. Or no, because Hades said, goddess, you try my patience and my favor. And so Hermes says, you are a goddess. And Hades tells Persephone that he ensures her that Hermes will keep her secret or he will be in Tartarus. So Persephone tells Hades to be nice because Hermes just saved her. And he says, you wouldn't have to be saved if you just waited for me in my office. But she's like super weak and in pain and tells him that she thinks she bruised her ribs when she fell. And Hermes says that she also has a really nasty like gash on her back. And Hades is like furious that she's hurt and teleports her to his palace. Chapter 7 is a touch of favor, and they are in a bedroom, and he kneels like looking at her, and he can like heal her with his touch. So she asks like, why are there dead people in the river? And he says that those are the souls who didn't have coins. And she says, you still do that? So notoriously in Greek history, when people died, they used to put coins on their dead's eyes to pay Chiron, who is like the man who would like ferry the boat across the River of Styx to take the souls to the Underworld. And if you didn't have money, you didn't go across, and you tried to swim and you drowned in the river. So Hades says, no, those are the old souls. I don't do that anymore. But basically that's their job, is to protect people from entering the Underworld like without permission. So he gives her this like black robe and tells her to change. And she's like, I'm not putting on your lover's robe. And he's like, it's this or nothing at all. And he says, I'd happily undress you. And basically, like, he heals her and she goes to sleep. And when she wakes up, he's like sitting, like watching her. And he's like just drinking whiskey. And she says, like, I need to get home. It's been hours. And he's like, but you came all this way. You might as well take a tour. And he's like devastated that she was hurt in his realm. And he says it'll never happen again. And after like sleeping for a while, he takes her outside. And she's pissed because, again, she's like, she asks, like, it's beautiful here. Like, what do you want from me? And she's like, I can't even create these beautiful flowers, because he takes her outside and there's like gardens and flowers and everything. And she says, why do you want me to create life here? And he waves his hand and the garden is gone. It's only desolate land. And he tells her, like, this is all an illusion. If you create something beautiful, it would just be from you. And he tells her, if you don't wish to fulfill the contract, I can have a suite prepared for you. And she says, I don't think we'll make good housemates. Hades tells her that she can come here as often as she wants to work. And she thinks that maybe she can convince Demeter to give her some like magical seedlings that will actually grow. Persephone asks, how can I enter the underworld to avoid the Styx next time? And he basically like pulls her in and like aggressively kisses her. And they start to make out. And he's like lifting her up and like rubbing like under her robe. And then he just pulls away. And she's like, I wouldn't have stopped him. And he tells her that once she enters the club, that she can snap her fingers and then she'll come like directly to the underworld. And she realizes that that was him giving her favor. So then she's upset because she thought like he really wanted to do that, but he was just giving her favor. And she says, can't you offer a favor like another way? And tells him like, I should go. And he grabs her and snaps his fingers, and they are in her room, and it's 5 a.m. And he tells Persephone, never bring another mortal to my realm again, especially Adonis. Stay away from him. Persephone asks, like, how do you know Adonis? And Hades says it's not relevant, but she says, I work with him. You can't order me. And Hades says, I'm not. I'm asking. Persephone says, asking implies choice. And Hades says, you do have a choice, but if you choose him, I'll fetch you, and I may not let you leave the underworld. Persephone says, you wouldn't. And he says, oh, darling, you don't know what I'm capable of. And he disappears. Chapter 8 is a garden in the underworld, and she's having breakfast with Lexa. Lexa is going with Adonis to like some stadium trials, and Lexa is like, why are your lips bruised? So Persephone thinks like, is basically thinking like, he was only giving me favor, like he didn't really want to like be with me. She's in denial, blah, blah, blah. And Lexa asks like, who, she was like, oh, I didn't kiss anyone. And Lexa's like, no, who kissed you? Because like your lips are bruised. And Lexa's like, you were gone for hours, like, and I heard you come home, basically. So Persephone goes to the library to find a book called The Powers of the Divine, and she basically is trying to learn, like, what all of Hades' powers are. And basically we learn that Hades, okay, backstory. So Hades, Zeus, Poseidon, Demeter, Hera, who is Zeus's wife, Athena, I think they call them like the 6 traitors. They overthrew their dad, who is Kronos. And when they did that, they all like, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, like they drew for power. That's how Hades ended up with the underworld. So basically this is what she's reading. So Hades got the underworld, and then they all split up Earth, the 3 of them. And that's when we learn that they all have equal power over the Earth. Then she learns that Hades' power, so his primary powers, he can do necromancy, reincarnation, resurrection, transmigration, and soul removal. All things dead. He also can manipulate the earth and its elements. And basically, the man's rich because he can draw precious elements and metals. So he can jewels, rubies, diamonds, all that good stuff. And also his powers include charm. He can have sway over the mortals and lesser gods, and invisibility. And she wants to make sure that he never uses that one on her. We learn again that the Narcissus is his symbol of rebirth, and Hades chose that to give the souls hope of what is to come. And she's like, basically while she's reading this, she's like, this doesn't seem like the God that she knows. So she reads all of this, and she decides to go to the flower shop to like buy seeds to like plant in the underworld. And then she goes to Nevernight and snaps her fingers, and it works. So she goes right to the underworld and starts planting. And so she plants these seeds, and she's like, I need water. So then she starts climbing on this garden wall looking for a fountain. And she doesn't see a fountain, but she sees a river. So what does the idiot do? She goes to did we not just almost drown? So she hasn't learned her lesson. So she's she didn't get in the water, but she's like, I'm just going to scoop some water up. Stay away from the water. Stay away. But she goes to like before she even gets to the water, she sees like 3 dogs and a red ball. So she plays a little fetch with these dogs. And then she goes onto this river, and she goes to like get some water out, and someone grabs her hand, and it's a goddess. And she says, do not draw water from the leafy. And this goddess is dressed in ancient clothes, and we'll learn that this is Hecate. Again, this is the goddess of witchcraft and magic, and the one that Lexa admires. She's also the protector of women and the oppressed. We stand Hecate. So Hecate tells her, again, don't draw water from the Lethe. This is the river known as the Lethe. And she says, I've been waiting to meet you since you fell in the Styx. And she tells her that the Lethe will steal your memories. So the girl was almost brainwashed. You idiot. Like, okay. Like, didn't you just, like, literally, I just don't understand. Like, it goes beyond, like, simple, like, ignorance with her. Also, the dogs come over, and so instead of, like, one giant three-headed dog, Hades' dog is 3 dogs in this retelling. One of them is Cerberus, but we also have Typhon and Orbis. And Hecate takes her to get water from, like, an actual water that she can use. And she takes Persephone to Asphodel Meadows. So that's where most of the souls are. It's very peaceful. And the souls here, like, live a very normal, like, earthly kind of life. Like, they have a market, they work, they are, like, having parties, all kinds of stuff. And it's basically so that they live a familiar existence. And she introduces Persephone as a goddess, as the goddess of spring. And they're like, oh, I don't know the goddess of spring. And so they spend some time down there, and then they go back and they find Hades playing shirtless with his dogs. Hubba hubba. And Hecate chastises him about not educating Persephone about the Lethe, because also, idiot, maybe before you give her just free reign over the underworld, you should probably tell her something. Give her a map. I don't know, like...
where to stay away from?
A brochure? Something. Don't go these places. One of you, while you're looking up Hades' powers, maybe you should look up the underworld. I don't know. These are important things. I don't know. After I almost drowned and got murdered, I would probably look up some stuff too. But that's just me. That's just me. I don't know. So Hecate gets summoned away by the judges. So there are like 3 judges in the underworld who decide the punishment of the souls. Hades actually, like, he's the god, but like he delegates very well. But Hecate is like known as the Lady of Tartarus, and she makes the decision on torture of the like very wicked. So Hades asks why Persephone is surprised how the souls like Hades, because when she went to Asphodel Meadows, like, they love Lord Hades, like they admire him. And he says, like, he's kind to them, just like not the mortals. And he tells her he won't answer any more questions from her because she basically is like determined to make him out to be this evil person, and he's not. And he says, if you want to ask more questions, we can play a game. And she's like, fine, but I want to pick. So chapter 9 is rock, paper, scissors. And he says, like, this game sounds horrible. And he says, how does paper beat rock? Fair question. Fair question. My son asked also, and he's 5. So she beats him the first time, and she wants to know about the contracts. He says he wants to challenge mortals' vices. He doesn't ask them to give up everything at once, and he asks her, like, what do you think I should change about it? She says, I wouldn't challenge mortals and maybe help pay them, like, for rehab if they need it. The next round, he wins, and he basically pulls her in to assess, like, a scratch she got on her hand when she was, like, walking on the garden wall, and he kisses it to heal it. Minty comes into the study, and she's pissed because they were canoodling. And then Chiron comes in. Now, in all, like, the depictions of Chiron, like, that we can find, he always looks like this, like, he looks like the Grim Reaper, basically. He does not look like this in this story. He's, like, a very handsome man. But he tells Hades that they have an intruder. So Hades brings Persephone with him, and there is a man named Orpheus, and he basically tried to sneak on Chiron's boat and fell in the river Styx. And Persephone is like, is this man dangerous? Because they have him, like, bound up. And since Hades can, read souls or whatever, Hades says no. So she asks for him to be released, and he does. And he basically said he came for his wife. He tells them they were only married for 1 day, and she died in her sleep, which is very sad. And Hades says, like, I will not bargain for souls. And he snaps, and Chiron and the man are gone. And Hades tells her, like, I cannot make an exception for one person and not the others. And I stand behind Hades on this. Like, I get it. If people ask Hades probably 5,000 times a day to bring somebody back. Like, you can't. No one would be dead. No one would be dead. People have to die. They have to die. So she snaps, and she's like, you've brought back souls for less. Basically because he's brought back people for war. And he's like, love is a selfish reason. And she's like, but war isn't. Minty is still hanging around. So she's like, do not speak to Lord Hades that way. And he, like, dismisses her also. And Persephone's like, I want to turn her into a plant. But obviously Persephone has no powers. So Persephone asks, like, why did you mock that man's love? Because he kind of like laughed when the man was like, I loved her. Which also I probably would laugh too because, I mean, you were only married for one day. Like, I don't know. I guess this is modern time. I guess if it was like old times, you know, they used to get like married, like when they met, the day they met, they got married. But this is modern time. So maybe they were dating for a while. So I don't know. He shouldn't laugh. That's wrong. But basically, Persephone tells Hades that he's ruthless and snaps her fingers so that she can leave. Chapter 10 is tension, and Persephone is at work, and she's working on her article about Hades. Adonis is flirting with a coworker, which, you idiot, because Persephone comes in and sees him, and obviously he's kind of dating Lexa right now. But Persephone goes to work on her article and basically is debating with how terrible she feels like Hades is, but also like how much she wants to be with him. And her mother shows up at the office and she's like, it's Monday, like we have lunch on Mondays. And Persephone's like, I forgot, like we need to reschedule. And I literally put, why does Demeter keep showing up if she wants Persephone to be a secret? Like, I don't get it. Like, how, like, Demeter, people know who you are. You're not a secret. Like, because, like, later there's, like, a gala, like, they go out in public. People know who Demeter is. Why do you keep showing up here?
Right.
I don't get it. Like, loopholes here. Plot holes. Anyways, so while she's talking to her mom, Adonis is, like, sneaking and reading her article, and she comes back, and she's like, I told you, like, I would let you read it. Like, don't go behind my back. That would piss me off, too. Like, get out of my shit. So she goes to visit her garden after work, and she snaps her fingers, and it doesn't work. So she goes into Nevernight and she runs into Hermes. And he follows her into Hades' office and admits that he does know about the bargain and he thinks that she's attracted to Hades. So she tries the door behind Hades' desk this time and that doesn't work either. So she can't get to the underworld. So Hades is coming in, so Hermes grabs her and like they hide in this mirror. And Menthe comes in behind Hades telling him that he's wasting his time and does he think that this will make the goddess think better of him? And he tells her to be quiet. So a woman comes in basically offering her life for her daughter who is dying of cancer. And he tells the woman that he will not do a contract because he doesn't want to take from her and says he will help her and give his daughter his favor so that she lives and tells the woman to make sure she tells no one. And he snaps his finger after the woman leaves and basically Persephone and Hermes just like fall. Well, Persephone falls out of the mirror and Hermes lands on his feet because he's used to this. And then Hades snaps his finger again and just like dumps Persephone in her garden. Chapter 11 is a touch of desire. And Persephone tried to snap to like go back to the office. Or no, she goes and like waters her garden and then she tries to like leave after that and her snap like still doesn't work. So she starts exploring Hades' palace and she finds this like liquid map and Hades comes in and it's like a map of the underworld, but she's like, this is incomplete. And he tells her that it will reveal itself to you when you've earned the right to know everything. It only shares like the full map with people that I trust. And she's like, well, can Menthe see it? And he's like, no. So he tells her that he took her favor to teach her a lesson. And he tells her like, you have a lot of emotions and no control over them. And running away is not how you learn. And he wants to like explore her anger, like basically when they fight, he doesn't want her running away. He wants to hear her advice. He wants to talk about it. And he tells her like, you understand the mortals and are very compassionate and like he wants her help. So Persephone asks like about Orpheus again, the man. And he tells her like raising the dead is not just as simple as bargaining with the fates. And he says that he bargains the ability to intervene with another soul when he bargains for another. So basically, and he says this more clearly later in the book, but I'll say it now. If Hades goes to the Fates, and if you know what the Fates are, like, okay, we'll talk about Hercules because most people have seen Hercules, like the kid movie. The Fates are like the three women that share the eyeball and cut the string when you die. So the Fates are the ones who decide when you die. Hades does not decide when someone dies. But if he goes and is like, hey, I want to say Bob, they'll say, cool, but now Billy has to die. So like, it's not like it's a life for a life. It's not like a freebie. And that's what Persephone doesn't seem to grasp here. So he tells her that he basically like asks her like, were you always interested in these contracts or like, is it only because you're in a contract now? Because he basically is like, you're pretending to represent the mortals, but it's only because like now you're stuck in a contract because you never said one thing. Like I've never heard about you or these contracts until you got stuck into a contract. And he asked her like, what were you desiring like the night that you were playing with me? And she doesn't want to answer him. And he basically kind of tries to seduce her answer out of her, but she doesn't give in. And he tells her, like, you can go home, and tells her to start thinking of herself as Lady Persephone. So he goes to snap his finger, and she says, don't snap. Like, if you don't want me to, like, snap my fingers and leave when I'm mad, don't do the same thing to me when you're upset. So she asks him, like, what will it take to earn your trust? And he just says, time. Chapter 12 is God of the Game, and Lexa wakes her up the next morning with news, and it's the article that Persephone was working on. It says, Hades, God of the Game by Persephone. So her work was leaked, and she can tell that it's not all her work. Someone has been editing it and knows it was Adonis. So she goes to work, and Adonis does not deny doing it. And she tells him that you fear Hades, and that's basically like why you did this under my name, because you would have never done this under your own name. And her boss, Demeter, calls her into his office, and he basically tells her, like, he wants more. He wants her to do 6 more articles on Hades, and he thinks it'll be a success. But he doesn't just want, like, the negative. He wants to know, like, his hobbies. What does the Underworld look like? He wants to know, like, no one has ever interviewed or got close enough to Hades to do this. Everyone is stopping Persephone now, like, holding up the article, like, asking about Hades. Lexa calls and congratulates her and asks if she wants to go to La Rose tonight, which is Aphrodite's club. And of course, Demeter is pissed for her writing, for writing a critical article about any god, and 2, for going Nevernight multiple times, and 3, for being anywhere near Hades. Her mom has been tracking her phone because basically she said, well, because you canceled lunch on Monday. Are you crazy? Yes, actually, she is crazy. And Demeter tells her, if you see Hades again, I will take you from this world. Persephone tells her, I will never forgive you if you take me to that prison. And Demeter says, I don't need your forgiveness. Like, why do you want me around if you hate me this much?
Right.
Chapter 13 is La Rose. They are headed to the club, and Lexa says you should write about his love life. And Persephone doesn't want to write about trivial things. She wants to change the world. So Lexa says, then write about the side of Hades that makes you blush, because what you wrote was what everyone basically already thought. Everyone thought Hades was like a terrible, evil person. Like, write the other part. Lexa wants her to admit that she likes Hades, but, you know, she doesn't want to do that. But she was dressed super skimpy tonight, basically. But she calls it she was dressed like Power. But you were dressed super skimpy tonight because she wants Hades to want her. And, of course, they get to the club, and Adonis is there. And she immediately wants to leave, but she doesn't want to leave Lexa with him, so she stays. Sybil comes over and says to Adonis that favor must be nice, and he, like, tries to shrug it off. But basically, the rumor is that he has Aphrodite's favor. And that, like, Persephone knows that Lexa could be in danger because gods are jealous. So, like, even though they have multiple lovers, they don't like for their lovers to have lovers. So, Lexa could be in trouble. Adonis says to Sybil that, like, we know that you're sleeping with Apollo. And she says, at least I'm honest about my favor. So, Lexa gets upset and asks Persephone if she thinks Sybil was right. And so they, like, go to the bathroom, and then they basically have someone come up to them and says, hey, drinks on the house. And they, like, start dancing or whatever. But then Persephone starts feeling super sick and realizes, like, she's dizzy. And then Lexa is gone, and she's all alone. So Sybil comes and finds her, and she's like, Persephone, how much did you drink? And Persephone is like, just one. And Sybil's like, there's no way you just had one drink. Persephone tries to leave, and Adonis grabs her and, like, holds her and tells her, like, I'm your friend. Like, you just need to get over the article. Blech. And he tells her, like, I want to talk. And she says, no. And he goes, fine, we don't have to talk. And the guy grabs her hair and starts aggressively kissing her. So ogres appear and grab him, and then so does Hades. Praise the Lord. Praise Hades. Hades tells her that he'll make sure Lexa gets home as, like, he, like, gets her out of there. And he says that he was there because she doesn't follow orders. And she says, I'm not yours. And he says, you are. You have my mark. And they're, like, in the car at this point. And so she straddles him drunkenly and says that maybe I should leave a mark on you. And he tells her, I could make you worship me. And, like, they start kissing. And she says, you will worship me. And I won't even have to order you. He tells her, don't make promises you can't keep. And she says, like, he's afraid, basically. And she falls asleep. Chapter 14 is a touch of jealousy. She wakes up naked in Hades' bed, and he says that she insisted on being naked as he, like, sits, like, in a corner. He's in his god form. And basically, she had tried to seduce him, like, all night, but they did not have sex. He tells her that she was drugged, but because she's immortal, she burned through it pretty fast. And she asks him about Adonis, and basically he says he's only alive because he has Aphrodite's favor, and he was in her territory. Persephone asks if he's jealous, And Persephone, or no, and Hades is pissed because he's like, no, I'm not jealous. I'm pissed off that he was touching you without permission. Hades asks, why are you determined to hate me? And Persephone says, I don't. But then he starts like quoting pieces of her article. And Persephone says, I was angry and I didn't know that it was going to be published. She tells him about the series that she was asked to write. And she says, I'll stop if you end the contract. And so Hades says that he'll erase Adonis's touch from her and like basically starts kissing on her. And then he stops and smiles and says that he would enjoy having sex with her basically, but you definitely, or no, he says that he knows that she'd enjoy having sex with him, but she definitely doesn't like him. And then he just like disappears. So she goes to check on her garden, which still has not grown a single thing. And then she goes to find Hecate. And Hecate has like this polecat. And Hecate says, oh, this was a witch who didn't listen. So I turned her into a cat. So Persephone tells Hecate everything like about that's going on with Hades and just everything. And Hecate asks Persephone like to show her like what her current power is. And so she kills like this little patch of grass. And Hecate says that gardening is not the only way to create life. You could have a baby.
And see, that's the first thing that came to mind when he said that. I was like,
And she was like, absolutely not, because it would have to be Hades. And she was like, I'm just saying. Chapter 15 is the offer. So Persephone is back at work, and her boss Demeter gives her 2 tickets to the Olympian Gala, which is like a fashion show, a fundraiser, and basically each year a different god hosts, and Demeter is sending her this year instead of him. Persephone doesn't think that Hades normally goes, but Demeter tells her that he does, he just doesn't let them take photographs of him. She's afraid of seeing her mother there, and this year's theme is the Underworld, so Hades is the one hosting, and it's a masquerade. And she wonders if Hecate can spell her like a mask, and she has to find her address. Mindy comes in to her job and says that she wants to demand an audience with her about the article, and tells her that you're threatening Hades' reputation with, like about these bargains. And Minty tells her that Hades will not bend to her every will, and she doesn't know what he sees in her. Minty tells her if she wants to be free of her contract, then you should take my offer. She says there's a well of reincarnation in the mountains of the underworld that will grow anything. Minty basically says that she wants Hades to be free of her, and that she is the worst wager he's ever made. And Persephone asks if this is about love, and like Minty just like scoffs. She's like, no, I don't love him. But like, it's basically like a power trip about Minty. Chapter 16, A Touch of Darkness. So the people of the underworld are having a celebration, or the souls of the underworld, I guess. And it's just because they love Hades. And they hope that he will one day have a queen, which is Persephone. So Persephone is like, what? And they said that basically Hades has never given a goddess so much freedom over his world. And she's like, I mean, what about Hecate? And they're like, well, I mean, like, Hecate's from here. Like, that doesn't really count. So Yuri is a soul from like the underworld and basically says that the celebration is also for Persephone and basically almost calls her like their queen. And she's like, oh God. But Persephone spends like the afternoon playing with the kids down there, and the blacksmith comes up to her and gives her this like super nice gold crown, which is like flat, made of like flowers, like into a circlet, and it's really nice. And she knows that they're starting to think of her as their queen. So Persephone asks Hecate about the gala and asks if she'll be able to get her a mask. And Hecate says she'll take care of it. So she goes back to the palace and takes a bath in Hades' private like bathing pool, and she doesn't hear him come in. So he joins her and like basically starts seducing her, and she basically tells him that she's a virgin. And they start to have some little sexy time, and Minty comes in. Oh my God. So she comes in and she goes, oh, we missed you at dinner and I see you're busy. And he says, very. And she leaves, but Persephone like pushes him away, and she's like, Minty can help you with your needs, and asks how often does Minty come to you in the bath, and he says, I don't want Minty. And Persephone says, well, I don't want you. And he tells her, I can taste your lies, and I know that you want me. And Persephone says that this was a mistake, and she basically goes home. So chapter 17 is the Olympia Gala. So Persephone goes home, but she is still so like sexually frustrated that she basically like has to like work this out by herself. And in the middle of all of this, she imagines that she hears Hades, but doesn't know if he's actually there or not. And then he's like gone. So the next day she's getting ready for the gala, and she's wearing like this really pretty red dress or gown, and she's taking Lexa with her as her guest, and Lexa tells her that she looks like a goddess. And she gets a gift delivered, and it's a mask from Hecate, and she is supposed to wear it with the crown that she got from the Underworld. So when they get there, they go upstairs at the gala so that they can watch all the gods arrive. So the gods that come are Ares, Poseidon, Hermes, Apollo, who brings Sybil, her mom, Demeter, who shows up in like a long white limo. But she said her mom looked actually upset, and normally Demeter puts on like a big show. Aphrodite, and she brings Adonis. And then Zeus and Hera show up. And they don't see Hades arrive, but she heads downstairs and she can like feel his presence. When she gets downstairs, he's like in a slick black suit. His hair is pulled back in a bun. And Minty comes in and like puts her like arm around his. And basically her and Hades like have a stare off. And everyone's like watching them stare at each other. So Hermes comes up and is like, yeah, we all saw you guys looking at each other. And Hermes says, like, Hades does not want Minty. Like, if he wanted Minty, he would have made her his queen years ago. And Hades goes up and does a presentation, and he addresses the article, and he says that he took the advice from Persephone, and he wants to do more for the humans, and he introduces the Halcyon Project, which is basically, like, some kind of project to help humans who have vices. Sybil comes up to her and says that her and Hades' colors are basically tangled together, and she knew that they would end up together, and that their destiny is woven by the fates. And Persephone's like, what? And then Aphrodite comes up to her in the bathroom, and she calls her Hades' muse. And Persephone's like, there is too much going on. Like, I have to get out of here. But Hades comes up to her and is like, dance with me. So she does, but she says, like, you should dance with Minty. She's your date. And he says, Minty is not my date. She is my assistant. You're jealous. And Persephone asks if you slept with her. And he says, it sounds like you want to play a game. And he snaps them away to the Underworld. Chapter 18 is a touch of passion. They go to the Underworld and they play poker. If she wins, he answers her questions. If he wins, he gets one piece of her clothing, which includes the jewelry, but she has like 4 pieces of clothing and or jewelry on, so not much. So of course, he wins first and takes her necklace. And then she wins and asks, have you slept with Minty? And he says, once a very long time ago. Then he wins and takes her earrings, and that's basically all she has left but her crown and her dress. She wins and asks, has he ever used his invisibility to spy on her, which he says no, and asks him to promise never to do it, which he agrees to. And then he wins, and he tells her that words mean nothing to him, action does, and he basically, before like she undresses, he carries her through the palace, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I want everyone to know that I don't want us to be disturbed. So they go to the room and they're going to have sex, and she basically tells him to drop his glamour, and he's like, why? And she's like, if you, because he tells her to leave the crown on, and she's like, if you want to have sex with me with a crown on, I want to have sex with a god. And they have sex for the first time. So chapter 19 is a touch of power, and she's basically a little panicked because she's conflicted over her feelings for Hades. And that morning they like have breakfast, and he tells her that he still doesn't want her writing about him. But she doesn't tell him that Adonis is the one who published the article. Chapter 20 is Elysium. I think it's Elysium. Elysium Fields. That's hard to say. Anyways. So Hades summons Thanatos. Thanatos he's essentially the Grim Reaper. Like, he is actually who goes and gets, like, the souls. He is who people actually see, like, when they're crossing over. So, that's Thanatos. And he has Thanatos escort her to go see souls because Persephone wants to go and see. She has like a list of souls who died, who had bargains with Hades, and she wants to see those. So he takes her to Elysium Fields, and that is a paradise, and that is where the pained souls go to heal. And she's surprised because that's where all the souls she wants to see are. Thanatos says Hades doesn't decide when the souls come, the fates do, and she realizes that she hasn't been listening. You think so? Like you think. And Thanatos says Hades doesn't care to convince the world that he's good. Like, he doesn't care that everybody thinks he's terrible. He's not here to convince them. So basically the souls in Elysium drink from the Lethe so that they have no memories. And they go to Elysium until they are healed and they're ready to reincarnate, and then they go back out into the world. Thanatos says Hades has regrets that he wasn't always kind, so like basically now he tries to do the most for the souls that he has to make up for it. Persephone wants to have a party at the palace because Friday or like the end of the week or whatever is reincarnation day, and she asks Hecate to help and she agrees. Chapter 21 is a touch of insanity. She is starting to work on her next article with an apology saying that she was wrong about Hades. Adonis comes up and says basically like to Persephone, you can't just stop talking to me. It's unprofessional. I was drunk and I barely touched you. And I put vomit. I barely touched you. I don't care if you barely breathed on me. I didn't want you to, and I told you to stop. If anyone's listening, boundaries. No means no. And that's a full sentence. No is a full sentence. Anywho. And Adonis asks Persephone if she's sleeping with Hades. Persephone says, you're a manipulator, you never take accountability for your mistakes, and you're a predator. So Adonis calls her a bitch, and Demeter overhears that and calls him into the office. And next thing we know, security comes in and is walking Adonis out, and he calls her a snitch. Bye-bye, Adonis. So Demeter calls her in and asks her, like, why didn't you tell me about the article? And he asked, like, how she's doing because she also has become, like, super famous very quickly. And she tells him that she wants to finish the articles because she wants people to see Hades as she does. So after work, a girl from her class comes up to her with a magazine with Hades on the cover. And inside of it is her picture. And they're basically saying that her and Hades are dating. But she tells the girl it's just gossip and that she would rather he respect her than love her by ending the contract. So she's still like hung up on this contract. And I'm like, girl, get over it. Get over it. That's me because I'm delusional. What disrespect. I have none for myself. Anyways, Persephone goes to find Hades after class, and he tells her that he has to go to Olympia for a council meeting, which hopefully only lasts a day, but it could last like days depending on how his brothers act. So she asks if he started the Halcyon project so people would think of him better, and he says that no, I did it because of you, because you were right. She asks him if she can hold the party at his palace for the souls at the end of the week, and he agrees, and she doesn't ask about the contract basically because she's afraid of him saying no and it being a letdown. She goes to have lunch with Sybil and Lexa, and Sybil says that Apollo wants her to be his lover, but she told him no because she doesn't want to share. So then she goes to Hecate's house, and she finds Hecate in a trance, and she like blows out her candle, and I was like, how rude.
I was like, okay, you can't wait.
Like, I know that Persephone hasn't had like a lot of experience, but like, I wouldn't think that you would just be like interrupting that. And if I was Hecate, I'd have been like, I like you, but don't you ever do that again in your life. Like, why would you do that? And so Hecate was like, oh, I was just cursing a mortal. So Hecate has Persephone start meditating to try to work on calling her power. And Persephone tells Hecate about sleeping with Hades and how she wonders if her mom will hate her. And Hecate tells Persephone that she is at war with herself and she needs to forgive herself. And Persephone tells Hecate that the first time she felt life was the first time that she had sex with Hades. Chapter 22 is the Ascension Ball. Hades is still on Olympia and it's like the end of the week now. And she's getting prepared for the ball, and he sent her a gown. And it's like this gold dress. It looks like liquid gold on her, and he just like appears. And he asks her to drop her glamour. And he drops his also as they get ready for the party. And they like have to hurry up and leave because they can't keep their hands to themselves. So they go to the party, and she dances with Chiron and Hermes. And Hermes jokes about her like basically like glowing about all the sex that she's had. And basically tells her that she doesn't even realize that she's in love with Hades. And tells her that Hades loves her too, and that she's basically like going to be his queen. And then she goes to Hades and asks if he's displeased about dancing with like other people, and he's like basically like, no, I'm displeased that we're not having sex right now. And he's like, let's go. And she's like, where are we going? And he's like, to fix that. So she asks him like, why did you have me drop my glamour? And he tells her he wants her to become confident in like being a god and like feeling like what a god is. And they end up having sex like for a moment, and then like what seems like fireworks go off, but it's actually the souls returning to the world. And it reminded me of like Starfall and ACOTAR, which I know is kind of the opposite of this, kind of, but like it gave me like Starfall vibes. Chapter 23 is a touch of normal. Hades wants to take Persephone out to dinner, and she is like, that's so like normal, even though they've been dating for a few weeks now, but also she panics because the media is starting to become obsessed with them. And again, like Demeter still doesn't know, and like she doesn't want all this information, but he tells her like it won't be public. And she gets an email from Adonis, and it's pictures of her and Hades very intimately. And he says, I know that you're sleeping with him and I want my job back. So she calls Adonis and he tells her that you have 3 weeks. He says, I made you famous and I know Hades won't do anything because I have Aphrodite's favor. So she tries to ask Demeter about bringing Adonis back, but he's like, no, he was a liar. Like, I'm not bringing him back. And she knows she can't let these pictures go public because her mom will take her back to the greenhouse. So they go on their date, and she basically like tries to use sex to distract the fact, like, because Hades knows she's upset. So she uses sex to distract Hades, and they go to the Grove, which is a restaurant that Hades like secretly owns. And she realizes like, I am in love with Hades, and they're like discussing hobbies, and she's like, I like to bake. So Hades is like, okay, I want to bake with you. So they decide to go to her apartment and bake. So he drops her off so she can let Lexa know, and Lexa's like, absolutely. And Lexa's boyfriend is there. His name is Jason. And Hades shows up in sweatpants, and she's like, you just bought those, didn't you? He's like, yeah, I only wear suits. Christian Grey. So Hades is like barely fitting in this apartment, and they bake cookies and like icing, and they start making out in the kitchen. And Lex is like, I wanted to see if you guys wanted to watch Clash of the Titans, which I love Clash of the Titans, the old one and the new one. And Hades is like, which one, the old one or the new one? And she's like, the old one. He's like, meh, okay. Like, that's so funny. So they watch it. She falls asleep, and he like just takes her to bed. And she tells him like, please don't leave. And he spends the night. And then they end up having like sex. And then in the middle of the night, they are awoken by Demeter. And she's like, get away from my daughter.
Of course.
I don't know why I say it like that, because that literally made me think about Twilight. Oh my God. All I heard was Kristen Stewart going, get away from my daughter. That's hilarious. Anyways, so Demeter is like, get away from my daughter. And she says, you betrayed my trust, and says you will no longer live like this. And she snaps, but nothing happens. And like, Persephone's looking at Hades. Hades is like calm, cool, and collected. Ain't got no clothes on. He's just sitting there. Like, where your clothes at? And Demeter grabs Persephone's wrist and is like, what did you do? And Hades says, release her. And he says that Persephone will stay until the contract is fulfilled. Persephone tells her mom that basically, like, it's her fault that she's in this contract. Like, and she feels bad because she's like, I don't want to, like, hurt Hades. But she's basically like, her mom didn't tell her anything about anything. So, like, she didn't know even what Hades looked like. She didn't know about the contracts and the bargains. And so she was not prepared. Like, Demeter is so stupid. You cannot possibly think that she was never...
Just throw her in the deep end, pretty much.
Yeah, like, that she was never... Like, she could have been at the grocery store and ran to this man. Like, she didn't seek him out. She didn't know it was him.
Right.
I mean, like, she was already in a contract before she knew it was him. So it's
and
like...
I mean, it's not like there's any photos online.
Yeah, like, there was like, no way to know it was... For you to hate this man, like, you could at least have, like, a target board up, like, this is Hades. Stay away from this man. Like, nothing. You didn't tell her about the sticks. You didn't tell... Like, you would think in all these years you would at least be educating the girl. She knew nothing about nothing. So, yeah, so she's basically like, it's your fault that I'm in this contract. And she's 100% true. So her mom strips away all her power from Persephone and leaves. And she tells her that when the contract is finished, you will come home and you will never leave again. And then she looks at Hades and she's like, I didn't mean it. And then Lexa is like, what is going on? Because she saw everything. Chapter 24 is a touch of trickery. And she tells Lexa everything, and Lexa is like hurt and then like in awe and then like, okay. And she's like, why didn't you tell me? And I mean, like, how do I tell a human like that I'm a goddess? That wouldn't have went over well. I agree with what she did. And she basically spends like the next few weeks scared of her mother, which I probably would too. And she doesn't like, she's basically like, I'm either going to be stuck in the underworld or stuck in the greenhouse. Like, I guess I would choose the underworld, but okay, whatever. So she's at work one day and Aphrodite comes in and basically says that Persephone is in the middle of a bet between her and Hades, and that she had bet Hades that he couldn't make someone fall in love with him in 6 months. And she basically is here to say, like, she basically came to see if it was true, and it is. She lost, and Hades succeeded. So obviously, Persephone is hurt, and she feels used. And Aphrodite says, I'm sorry to hurt you, but I didn't believe, she says, until today, I didn't believe in love, and she vanishes, which is interesting because Aphrodite is the goddess of love. So Persephone's pissed, and she's like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done with this contract. So she leaves work, and she's going to the underworld to find the well of reincarnation. So she starts heading to the mountains, and Cerberus joins her, and she's like, she's wandered all the way to freaking Tartarus, but she doesn't figure it out till she sees a river of fire. What a clue. And Cerberus like leads her away, and they find a pool. So she's filling this cup up, and she hears a thin man like, water. It's like that SpongeBob episode. Water. The man is like bound up, and he's like, water. And of course she goes to help him, and I'm like, didn't we just discover that we were in Tartarus? Don't you think maybe we should just mind our own damn business? Of course not. So she goes and gives the man water, like, oh, you poor thing. And then she's like, okay. He tells her, well, I'm cursed to an eternity. I'm denied a pleasure. And he says, I've been begging for an audience with Hades to get transferred to Asphodel Meadow. Or I think it's just Asphodel. Asphodel Meadows is in freaking Crescent City. Sorry. Oh my God. So she's like, well, I know Hades can see the soul. So like, obviously he must be terrible. So she's like, so the man can kind of like see that she's like having this thought process. So he like starts to look a little vicious, and he's like, you don't believe me. And so she's like about to leave, and he's like, well, can you give me like food? Cause he's like basically bound, like just out of reach of food, like an apple tree, and just out of reach of this water. Like how freaking vicious is that? Like you're like just right there. Oh my gosh. And so she goes to give him the food, and he knocks her in the water and starts drowning her. So she like goes into her goddess form so that she can escape. And she runs into Hades as she's like running out of here. And we learn that this is Tantalus. So she runs into Hades, and he goes back and he tells Tantalus that before I was just your jailer, but now I'm going to be your punisher. And he was like, the judges were too lenient on you, and now I'm going to punish you. And he says that I'm going to curse you with a never ending hunger, and everything, he said, but everything that you eat or drink will basically like be fire in your throat. And then he snaps and sends the man away. And he asks Persephone if she's hurt, and she says, you hurt me, and tells him like that she knows about the Aphrodite bet. And she tells him like, you lied to me. And he says, I never lied to you, which he didn't. And this is not about the bet with Aphrodite. And he's like, basically like, you don't know me at all. Like, don't judge me off of that. So they basically have like hate sex. And then she still is trying to leave, and he gets her to stay and talk. And Persephone asks like basically why. And he says that he offered her the bargain based not on like the bet with Aphrodite, but that, basically like he saw this need in her, and that it was her that decided that this bargain was impossible, not him. And so she calls him a liar again. And he says, if I am one thing, I am not a liar. He says, I'm giving you the power to escape your mother. And she says, how? And he tells her like, I gave you worshipers. So basically like the first time that they have sex, he's like, let me worship you. And he's like, I worshiped you. Like basically that's where the gods get their power from, is from having mortals that worship them. And like in almost all like Greek god movies, that's kind of how they get rid of them. They stop believing in them and they die. So she says, you forced me to a contract when you could have just told me that I need worshipers. And he says, it's not about the powers. It's about confidence. And if you would have known, he's like, what would you have done? Like publicly announce that you were a goddess? And like, she knows that she wouldn't have done that either. So like, whatever. So she kind of snaps and says like, why don't you keep telling me how pathetic I am? And he says, I'm not trying to, but that's how she feels. And she says, I'm pathetic for loving you. And then all of a sudden these vines like erupt from the floor, and Persephone has powers. And he goes, well, you won. Like basically she created life. So chapter 25 is a touch of life, and her mark is gone, and she goes home and she just like collapses crying to Lexa, and like because she no longer has Hades, and she knows her mother will be coming soon. And Adonis texts her like TikTok, And basically, she reaches out to Alexa, and her boyfriend is a programmer. So she asks him if he can hack into Adonis's computer and delete all the pictures. And he does, and he also finds some more information. So she sets up a meeting with Adonis, and she also invites Minty. And so when they show up, they're both like, why are you here? So she says, I know Minty took the photos that Adonis has and that you both have been hacked and the photos are removed from both of your devices. Adonis is like, that's illegal. And she's like, yeah, like blackmail. Minty says, you were supposed to fall in love with him, not the other way around. And basically says that the reason that Hades didn't tell her about the bet with Aphrodite is because like she's a child and he can't confide in you. And Persephone is like, you know what? That's it. So she summons vines and like attacks Minty, and then she turns her into a little mint plant. And I love that for her. I love that. So Adonis is like, what the fuck is going on? Because obviously he thinks like Persephone is just a human, right? Like he's like, what is going on here? So he's panicking, and she like kicks him in the groin and says that I'll curse you if you threaten me again. And then she starts to turn his like arms into like little like tree limbs. And he's like, turn me back, I'll do anything. And she says, I want a favor to retrieve from you at a later time. And she asks him if he knows what a corpse lily is. And he like doesn't answer. And she's like, I'm not going to ask you more than once. And he's like, no. And she tells him, it's a parasitic flower that smells like decay. And I'll turn you into one if you touch another woman. And he's like, who are you? And she says, I'm Persephone, goddess of spring. And then teleports to the greenhouse. And she turns his arms back. He's fine, unfortunately. And so she goes to her mom. Her mom calls her Kore. Demeter says that she did what she thought was best. Demeter says that basically when Persephone was born, she went to the Fates because a goddess hadn't been born in a very long time. And what the Fates told her that Persephone was destined to be a queen of darkness, that she was destined to be Hades' wife, and so that she was keeping her safe. And Persephone says, you didn't keep me safe. You kept me for yourself and kept me from love. And Demeter says, you can't love him. And Persephone tells her she's wrong. So Persephone tries to leave, and Demeter says, like, I can't let you leave. You're going to live here, because she basically uses her power to, like, block her in. But Persephone summons all these vines, and she breaks out of the roof of the greenhouse, and she's gone. Chapter 26 is A Touch of Home. So Persephone has graduated, and she's really lonely because obviously she doesn't have Hades, she doesn't have Hecate, she doesn't have her mom, and Lexa's like really busy with her boyfriend now, so she's not around that much. So she's working full-time at the news place now, and she really misses Hades and Hecate, but she's just too embarrassed to like go back and try to make up with them. And she hasn't heard from her mom. So her and Lexa are talking about going to a club tonight for Lexa's birthday, and Hecate shows up. And she's like, how are you? And she's like, we're all sad. Like, come back. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter that you guys found each other through the contract. I agree, Hecate. And she asks Persephone, like, do you know how you fulfilled your contract? And she says, like, you brought life through Hades, which I've heard people debate this, like, this is stupid. And I'm like, it is kind of stupid. But basically, like, you, like, grew life within Hades. And she's like, do you love him? And she says, yes. So Hecate says, well, then go to him. But Persephone's like, why? Like, he hasn't come to me. Like, why would I go to him? Obviously, he doesn't want to be bothered. And Hecate says, like, I think he was just trying to give you space. And so she looks up, and Hades is just, like, right down the street waiting. So she runs to him, and they, like, start kissing. They both tell them, like, each other they love them. And there's people, like, taking pictures of them all over the place. And he tells her, like, he wants to claim his favor. He says, come to the underworld and live with me. And he says, like, live between the worlds. Like, you can come and go as you please. And they, he says, like, one of them says they want to go play a game, and they kind of, like, vanish, basically. And technically, that is the end. But we get some bonus stuff. So first, we get a bonus chapter called Minty the Plant. So basically, she has not been caring very much for Minty the Plant. So she takes Minty the Plant to Hades. And first of all, Hades has not even thought about Minty. I don't know how long it's been. I'm assuming a few months. Hades has not even looked for his assistant, but whatever. He's like, why is my assistant a plant? And she says that she upset me. And basically, like, doesn't want to tell him why. So he kind of uses sex as, like, a motive to try to get her to talk, but then that pisses off Persephone, so then she transports them to the underworld and like restrains him and then uses sex on him to get him, like teach him a lesson, like don't use sex on me. So then she ends up telling him what happened, and he already knew. Like he was like, if you hadn't punished her, I was gonna punish her for sending you into Tartarus like that. So they don't end up restoring Minthi, they just plant her in the garden. So Minthi is still a plant. And then he takes her to a new grove. It's called the Grove of Persephone, so that she has a special place in the underworld. And basically he calls her like his queen, and that no matter what, even though they're not married yet or anything, that she'll always be his queen. And then we switch to Hades' point of view, which are the first 2 chapters of A Game of Fate. So basically it's the beginnings of A Touch of Darkness, and what we learn is that we basically get the POV of what happened with Aphrodite. So Aphrodite so if you don't know, Aphrodite was given to Hephaestus. Hephaestus is like the goddess of like tech. Basically, like he like does like computer stuff. He's super like good. But Hephaestus is the son of Hera, but he is like supposed to be like very scarred and like not attractive. Obviously, Aphrodite is supposed to be like the most beautiful and was married to him and like originally not happy about it at all. So Aphrodite is just not very happy because in this world she now loves Hephaestus, but when they first got together, she had lovers and like treated him badly, and now he's just kind of like over it. So she like acts out because she's very petty and childish. So she is here because she's kind of just bored, and Hades finds her, and she's basically sitting on this married man's lap and basically is like, tell me like what you want. And he's like, I like attention. Basically, she's like using her glamour on him, and he tells him like, well, when you go home, or because she's like, what about your wife? And he's like, oh, I love my wife. And she says, when you go home, your wife will hate you basically and find you disgusting. So she makes, like, she had a favor that Hades owed her, so she makes him play a game with her. She wins, and that's where she, like, does the bet with him and basically says that he has 6 months to make someone fall in love. And this is literally, like, an hour before he meets Persephone for the first time. And if he loses, he has to bring back Basil, which is, like, it was basically her warrior that fought in the war for her, and also her lover. And Hades is like, Aphrodite, you really want to be with Hephaestus, and you just asked Zeus for a divorce, and you want me to bring back your lover. Like, why are you doing all the things that would not make Hephaestus want to be with you, even though that's what you want? Like, why don't you just talk to him? And she's like, he won't talk to me, like, blah, 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 blah. So basically, that's kind of what those first 2 chapters are, is how, like, the bargain between Aphrodite and Hades started for the 6 months to make somebody who ended up being Persephone fall in love with him. So, the end. The end. All right, what did you think of this book?
I liked it. I'm trying to, I forget what I rated it, so I have to go back and look. I rated it 4 stars. I liked it.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.5. Because I do really like it, but there are things I have issues with, and it's hard because I've read like the rest of the series. Persephone gets on my nerves, and she really gets on my nerves the rest of the series. But it's just like, girl, stop it. But I love Greek retellings. I love Hades. And I want to read the other ones, but yeah, like, I don't know.
It was I was a bit thrown off at first because I didn't realize, like, how modern of a retelling it was.
Yeah, it's super...
So I was like...
normal.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
And then the farther I got into it, I was like, okay, I'm liking it, so.
Yes. Did you do any, I actually thought of some, like,
I did not do any.
I only really have one, and it's for Minthi, and I just think that Emily Blunt would be, like, such a good casting for her. Like Devil Wears Prada would be, like, perfect for her. But yeah, like, I think, I
Emily
just love
Blunt
that.
or, what's her face? Oh, what is she on?
Oh, I haven't watched that.
I've not watched it either. Oh, Lucy Hale.
Oh, I do know who that is, yeah.
I feel like she would, I don't know, yeah. So overall, it's 3.83 with 29 over 290,000 ratings.
Jesus.
So
it's crazy to think that many people could read your book.
Right?
Like, that's just crazy.
Let's see one of our 5-star reviews. See, I forgot about that.
One of us will remember one of the things.
Okay, this one's a little bit of a longer one, so I'm going to only read a little bit. But 5 stars. Jessica said, "Uh-oh, someone please admit me into rehab because I am addicted. I started this last night just wanting to read a couple of chapters before bed, and the next thing I knew, it's 2:30 a.m. and my eyes were glued to each page. I swear this book is a drug, with each chapter feeling like taking a hit. I couldn't put it down." And for our 1 star...
Oh God, I'm scared. Always scared.
Okay. Nellie, with the 1 star, said, "This is basically an unedited, underdeveloped Greek mythology smut. This book is if the worst parts of 50 Shades and Lore Olympus had a baby. It was just terrible in every aspect, and I will never understand how this even got published in the first place."
Dang, harsh.
Yeah, that's super harsh.
Speaking of, Lore Olympus is, if you love the Hades and Persephone retelling, but Lore Olympus really gets into like a lot of the other gods. It's Lore Olympus is a webtoon on Webtoon, which is an app, and it is actually in its like final season, which is so sad. And the author is Rachel Smythe. I think she's Australian. It's been out for like years. I actually even have some of the graphic novels. It's so good. It posts weekly. I think it's actually like Saturdays our time, like in America. Yeah, like I've been like, I stumbled upon it, like it was in my Facebook feed years ago, and like she'll go on hiatus for like 4 months at a time. And then also like for a podcast plug, there is Laura Lynn Pod, which is 2 girls. I think they live in like Boston or something like that. I don't know. They started like a couple years ago. Like they like summarize the episodes I think they post every other week, and then they also do like bonus episodes, so they like talk about Greek stuff or whatever. They're just silly, goofy. Yeah, that's funny too. So I don't know what they're gonna do like when it's over, but and then you can also buy the books like till they started printing like graphic novels, and they're really nice. But yeah, like really good. Also, Hades is adorable, and like we love him. We love him in that as well. So if you liked this, it's not as smutty, but whatever. Your imagination, whatever. Yeah, so that's that. All right, so next week our book is, I had to pull it up and then I went somewhere completely else. Our next read is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Johnson.
Jackson.
Oh, is it Jackson?
Jackson.
I literally put Johnson on
Kim
the
Johnson
thing.
for Invisible Sun.
It's literally Johnson on the thing. I'm gonna have to update that. Oh my gosh! Somebody tell me when I'm wrong when I post stuff. I move so fast when I'm like making content and stuff. Okay, D. Jackson. I'm an idiot. Well, anyways, Monday's Not Coming. It's also a reread for me. That is crazy. I'm an idiot. I'm gonna go look at this. What is wrong with me? I am unwell. I need help. Somebody, anybody, save me. I also just realized I haven't been posting on my business page this week. What is wrong? I am in shambles. I don't know. Okay, but anyway, so yeah, that is it definitely is Jackson. That is a reread for me. So I'm and Keely's already read it. So I read that like a few years ago. I really liked it. So I hope I still like it. I think so. Okay. Anyways, anything else?
I think that's all.
All right. Well, make sure you're following us on all the socials. So TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at my brain just went completely blank at Book Perspective. I think that's it. Yep. Bye.
Bye.